Turn that up.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Calling to order our council time this February 12th, 2025. We'll start with the roll call.
Councillor Young,
Here.
Councillor Belcott,
Present.
Councillor Fuentes,
Here.
Councillor Little,
Here.
Chair Marshall.
Here. Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda?
There's no amendments on the topics, but I would like to ask council that following policy updates, that we recess council time to allow the work sessions to move forward. We have two department updates that are fairly succinct, and then the Camp Bonneville update. And then once that's done, then go into executive session.
Any objection? Okay, seeing none. Public comment. Public comment is on agenda items only. I just mentioned that Camp Bonneville is a work session, so it would be on agenda items only. And there's a limit of 3 minutes. So let's get started.
Ann Shaw,
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Councilors, I'm here to comment on the omissions and errors in the minutes of the February 5th, 2025 council time meeting. The minutes omit the council saying that issues about law enforcement uses of Camp Bonneville were discussed at this meeting would be brought back to a council time meeting. This discussion has suddenly been relegated to a hastily scheduled work session where no public comment is allowed. This raises questions about why county management has never held any public hearings about these issues and continues to promote the expansion of law enforcement uses at Camp Bonneville that is hidden from public scrutiny. The minutes omit the chair's announcement that council has stopped the use of Camp Bonneville by the Metro Bomb Squad. It's unclear whether council's direction ended the uses of explosives by just MEDU or all other agencies, including ATF. This is an important matter of public interest since the Army ended the use and storage of all explosives on this property in 1995. The minutes omit discussion between the deputy county manager and the council about CCSO's requirements that deputies recertify their firearms training 3 times a year. The deputy county manager failed to explain or justify whether such certification necessarily had to be conducted at Camp Bonneville. The minutes omit the council's question to the deputy county manager about FBI's compensation to the county for its use of Camp Bonneville. The deputy county manager did not answer this question, yet she undoubtedly is aware that the FBI has never paid rent or user fees. The FBI has only funded modest improvements to the FBI firing range that directly benefit the FBI. Nor did the county manager mention that the FBI has routinely violated the terms of its now expired use agreement for many years. The FBI has abused this agreement by consistently doubling the number of days it actually uses the range beyond the 45 agreed upon days, has conducted unauthorized gas and explosives training on other areas of the property, and has expanded its use to other old Army ranges not authorized in the now expired agreement. The minutes omit the deputy manager's statement that use agreements with multiple agencies are being discussed, yet she failed to mention that law enforcement use of Camp Bonneville has expanded well beyond the single authorized firing range, turning the property into a de facto training facility. The FBI acts as if it owns the property. Records show that FBI guests include hundreds of law enforcement agencies that either participate in FBI training or may actually be conducting their own training. The FBI has invited private companies to use the firing range and even invited private citizens onto the property in violation of deed restrictions that are still in effect. These are all matters of great interest, and it would be great if the public actually had an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with the council rather than just these 3-minute statements.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Just real quick point of clarification. So it's not open public comment today. It is agenda items only, and we don't normally have comment on work sessions. However, it would be my recommendation at this point to suspend our normal rules of procedure and allow public comment for this specific issue only.
Thank you for that comment. It has been our practice, though, for people to comment on minutes. That often happens. So I feel like that's the avenue to move forward with this. So I think we agree.
And Chair, if I could just
Yes.
clarify, on minutes, we only do action minutes. We don't summarize the full deliberation and dialogue. It's only action minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Next person.
Patty Reynolds.
Sorry. There we go. Sorry. My name's Patty Reynolds, and I'm here to address the agenda item number 4 under old business. I'm here to express my concern regarding the errors and omissions of the minutes of the February 5, 2025 council time meeting. I've given a copy of these concerns in the back there so that if I can't finish it all, you can still read my input. The abrupt ending of amending of today's agenda, changing the discussion of Camp Bonneville from council time, which allows for public comment, to a work session, which disallows public comment, conflicts with the minutes statements that the issues discussed would be brought to council time. This feels like a sleight of hand maneuver to bypass and ignore legitimate and well-documented concerns of the community regarding the continuation and expansion of law enforcement activity on the grounds of the camp. The minutes do not include the chair's comment that the council has stopped all explosive detonation by the Metro Bomb Squad. Was it the intention to assure public that all agencies will stop using explosives, or just this single entity? An important distinction, since more than the Metro Bomb Squad are using the explosives, and all uses of explosives were ended by the Army in 1995. The minutes do not include the council's question to the deputy county manager about the FBI's past compensation to the county for the use of its property. There's no documented answer to the question. However, she's most likely aware there has been no monetary compensation of rent or other fees, and only minimal modifications to the shooting range that have been described initially to be done by the FBI. Also not mentioned by the deputy county manager in the minutes was the FBI's use of the range after the expiration of the contract in 22, and the numerous violations during the continued non-contractual or free usage of the range. This includes increases to the number of days of usage and authorized gas and explosive training outside the agreed areas of use. Finally, the minutes also omit the deputy county manager's statement that use agreements are being considered with multiple agencies. What she failed to mention was that in violation of the conservation deed restrictions, the FBI and other agents and their many guests are utilizing areas beyond the currently agreed upon and not thoroughly cleaned shooting range to conduct training exercises. These omissions and contract violations need to be included into the February 5, 2025 minutes in order to at least attempt to show the public the transparency spoken of so freely and frequently.
Thank you.
Gregory Shaw.
My name's Gregory Shaw. I'm the spouse of Dr. Balkovich Shaw, my wife. I'm here to speak to the omissions and errors in the minutes of the February 2025 council time meeting. There's no mention in the minutes of the chair's comments that the direction had been given to end use of the Camp Bonneville by the Metro Bomb Squad. As mentioned before, it's not clear whether the chair's comments meant that direction had been given to end all explosives at Camp Bonneville by all agencies or just MEDU. It's not clear to whom this direction was given or who exactly issued that direction. There's no mention in the minutes of the discussion between the deputy county manager and council about the CCSO requirement for firearm certification 3 times per year, or why that requirement had to be met at Camp Bonneville. There is no mention in the minutes of the amorphous link between council considering the draft FBI agreement and consideration of the agreement for the CCSO or other agencies, as pointedly asserted by the deputy county manager. Last year, the sheriff wrote to the director of the CJTC, which are, are sponsors of the training center that's being built in Clark County, that the sheriff's office has a use agreement for the FBI range, and the deputy manager is the point of contact. Let me say that again. The sheriff wrote to the director of CJTC that the sheriff's office has a use agreement for the FBI range. You haven't heard that before. Nobody talks about that. Neither the deputy county manager or the sheriff's office has provided copies of this use agreement in response to several records requests. Is this so-called agreement real or not? It's a basic question, not a hard question to answer. I ask that the council ask the county manager what the answer is. When asked by a council member if the FBI had been compensating the county for the use of Camp Bonneville firing range, the deputy county manager did not answer the question, but deflected the question by claiming that the two parties have been in discussions for a long time and the FBI has been a good tenant. This is not mentioned in the minutes council is asked to approve. This last item is especially important to be part of the formal minutes because despite comments of the deputy county manager, the council should have been told that the FBI had never paid Clark County rent or user fees and had, as the deputy county manager knew and knows full well, the FBI had almost doubled the days of use set down in the expired use agreement, had weapons, gas agents, and had used weapons, gas agents, and even explosives at Camp Bonneville that violated the expired use agreement. And it's used portions of the property that were explicitly not authorized. I'm running out of my time. Please stop hiding and restricting information about Camp Bonneville from the public.
Thank you very much.
Jim Byrne,
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Jim Byrne, and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of Clark County to comment on agenda item number 4 in last week's meeting minutes. We have submitted questions and comments to you that we hope you will use to aid your discussion at the work session later on today. Our questions can be summarized as 1. There seems to be a basic understanding over what is a natural conservation conveyance. How is a firing range, deployment of chemical agents, storage, and detonation of explosives compatible with the restrictions outlined in the U.S. Code for Conservation Conveyance? How are they compatible with the conservation of natural resources? 2, should the county allow various law enforcement agencies access to the property when it has not been deemed safe and the deed does not appear to exempt law enforcement from access restrictions? 3, how will the county address the years of residents' reports that the FBI uses the property even when the state has closed all state forests due to heightened red flag wildlife risks? 4, how will the county enforce any agreements? 5, what ideas does the county have to fulfill its obligation in the public participation plan? 6, exactly how many wells have tested positive for increases in contamination, and what is the total number of wells sampled? 7, how can Camp Bonneville be included in the PROS plan if the county plans to move forward with continuing its use as a multi-agency law enforcement training facility rather than a regional natural areas as it is currently defined? Finally, we'd like to reiterate our position on this matter. We are concerned about the apparent conflict with use restrictions. We are worried that these activities will continue to contaminate the property, and we believe that the community has legitimate concerns regarding wildfire, groundwater contamination, and lack of public engagement. The county should move forward with its plans for conservation and public access by focusing on the cleanup. Camp Bonneville is a beautiful wild place that has experienced much abuse in its history, and it was provided to the county with the intent of remediation and the purpose of natural resource conservation. It is finally time for the county to take decisive actions necessary to realize the future for Camp Bonneville. We ask that the council decline moving forward with any new law enforcement agreements and that the county arrange for the Clark County Sheriff's Office needs at a new appropriate location, such as the indoor firearms range planned for in Ridgefield.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Next.
Oh.
Teresa, you had your hand up? Come on forward. Go ahead.
Teresa Hardy, co-chair of the Conservation Committee of the Sierra Club, speaking in regards to the minutes for February 5th, Camp Bonneville. As an organization, my statements will be very similar, the same as the previous speakers. During this discussion on February 5th, the deputy county manager claimed that the county has been negotiating with the FBI since last year, but the contract expired 2 years ago. The deputy county manager also stated that the firing range was a use that is allowed in the deed. And days earlier, the Clark County lands manager on Camp Bonneville made the same statement to a resident. This is not accurate. There is no mention of the firing range in the deed. What the deed does say in Exhibit C, Part 4, under public access restrictions, is that remediation staff are the only ones permitted to be on the property until the cleanup is finished. There is no exemption for law enforcement in this document. The Camp Bonneville Memorandum of Understanding also does not exempt law enforcement, and in Section 3 only identifies the Forest Stewardship Plan as the acceptable use under the U.S. Code for conservation conveyance. The deputy county manager claimed that they had just learned about the bomb squad's use of Camp Bonneville to detonate explosives just a couple of weeks ago with the recent incident. This is inaccurate. We possess public records of an email chain from 2022 in which a resident reported an explosion shook his house. Eric Harrison and Rocky Houston of Clark County staff were on the scene when it happened. This information was forwarded to the deputy county manager at the time, and the community has sent and referenced these documents to current staff and council many times since. The emails show that these documents do exist. The county manager also claimed that the Oregon FBI has been a good tenant. When public records show, Eric Harrison stated that the areas that the Oregon FBI used outside the firing range were not properly policed or cleaned. The county manager also stated that ecology is responsible for public participation, but the public participation plan for Camp Bonneville is clear that the county is responsible for most of these efforts, including a CAG where the community is welcome to provide comments and ask questions. Former CAG members have proven themselves to be credible, valuable, and necessary. And moving forward, we need community re-involvement in Camp Bonneville. It's up to this new council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Online?
We have
Two online.
online.
Okay.
Caller, you're being unmuted. Please state your name for the record and go ahead with your comments.
Good afternoon. Kimberly Goheen, Elvin Life citizen of Clark County, Washington. Yes, citizens, there's always a way for the public to speak here. So I'm encouraged by all the speakers today, I'll tell you. And this is nothing personal, but I want to address number 4, old business, the minutes. Out of total respect for this person, I'm addressing concerns towards the position of representation as a council member. Which is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And again, with all respect to Michelle Belcott as a person, I'm asking for a transparent answer to this particular absence on February 5th. And will it, and are there going to be more absences foreseen? In other words, you know, I know everybody's busy, so I would like to know on record. So, and again, we're elected and we want you there. So, and I appreciate that. I'm just simply asking for transparency on record to the people on this issue as God sharpens us who love him. for a better understanding. And stating to this council again, you are here for the people, by the people, and of the people. And today's agenda limits the public participation. However, they're starting to figure out how to do this, read back on the minutes, to agenda items only. It just so happens today's agenda, number 7, mentions work session, and therefore they could have talked about any work sessions because there's nothing there that would stop them from doing so. And that will be the agenda I'm concerned about, is your work sessions for the whole day agenda. So I'm going to point out for clarification that I should be able to speak on all items that are presented on the same day, such as starting with today's 9 o'clock work session on the jail remodel and expansion, and this 1 o'clock agenda, and speak to the following work session that follows council time, which is of great concern to me. When you look at the printed agenda, it's clear that the full day's agendas fall as a bold heading of agendas and minutes. I've said this before, if it's on the day's agenda, that whole day, no matter 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock that night, it is that day's agenda. You cannot limit the people. We are your boss. And speaking to the jail system and the public defense, it opens the door to repairing our public service agencies and making sure the public is involved in this process. We need more public in there, and I've asked that before too. We need a quorum, right? Okay, so there are thousands of untold stories about Clark County's jail system, the court system, and the prosecutor's office, and the public defenders. Those are all very close to my heart here. Short of thinking there's corruption in those public services, poor management, and
Thank you. Your time is up. Is there one more person?
We have Rick Vermeers. Please go ahead with your comments. Rick, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead with your comments. We're having he's not having some problems now.
Okay, it seems like we're not able to connect with him. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. And just a clarification related to, because it does say that we would have brought up Camp Bonneville at council time, and it did become a work session. Was there any compelling reason for that, or?
Because it was an update and there's no direction being asked. It's really to answer questions that council had and provide that overview, which we do during work sessions.
Okay, there could be some direction though.
I would say if there's direction, we can certainly bring it back to a council time agenda as well to solidify anything on that. Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on with the agenda. Old business would be approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, move to approve
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. So moving on to new business, fourth quarter financial report. Welcome.
I think I'm on. Okay. Good afternoon, Council. We are here today. I'm Mark Gasway, Finance Director. We're here today to give you an update on our fourth quarter 2024 finances. This is a preliminary close to the year end. We'll actually have our financial report done next month, and then it'll be audited, and we'll bring you the formal financial report. This is, you'll note that this says draft on it because these are preliminary numbers. I believe everyone has a copy. We have some extra if you didn't bring it with you or would like a copy.
Does anyone
No.
need a copy?
I'll do that. And I have with me today Mitchell Kelly. He's our manager for reporting analysis, and he'll be presenting the quarterly report.
Great. Welcome, Mitchell.
Okay, hello, Mitchell Kelly, reporting and analysis manager. As we go over, as we go over this report, it is noted that this is a preliminary. There is going to be some changes once all the numbers are finalized. But as just kind of a general overview, the first graph shows the general fund revenue compared to prior years. The blue bar is this current year, 24, and the tan bar is prior year. So we can note that property tax and sales tax increased slightly, and that's in comparison with our projections. It's expected. The other revenue, we have one large revenue that we're waiting to post. So that at the end, once we finalize all of our financial information, that other revenue will be very comparable to prior years. The last revenue that we're waiting to post is related to the revenue recovery for the ARPA grant. This is 24 was the last year that we could claim revenue recovery. So moving forward, that other revenue will decline. This 24 is the last year that we can claim that revenue. Moving forward to the expenses, we have noted in the tan bar the actual expenses year to date for 24, and the blue bar is the budgeted expenses. So budgeted salaries and benefits were very comparable to what we had expected. The actual expenses were very comparable. The only significant variance was the services and other charges. That is related to some budgeted transfers that are going to occur in future years. They just did not occur in 24. So it's planned events that have been carried forward. The final part of the general fund analysis that I wanted the council to look over and just be aware of is related to fund balance. So fund balance, there's different designations for what is available for county use. The unassigned fund balance, you can see, has been growing substantially over the course of the last few years in relation to the ARPA and revenue recovery. Some of those projects, some of that fund balance is designated for the projects that have been that were approved by council in prior years and have not yet completed. But just so you know, this is still in flux. We're going to be finalizing these numbers within the next month or so. But this is estimated where we stand at this time.
I have a question here. So this is a total for all of the fund balances?
This is for general fund alone.
General fund.
Yes.
And there are some departments where we have a fund balance policy.
Yes.
Is that correct? But not all. So it
Yes,
would be
in
those-
general fund, there is a fund balance policy, and that's listed under the assigned portion on this spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to clarify, if you'll notice the estimated fund balance this year, it's estimated to grow from 101 million to 111 million. The majority of that increase is going to be from the revenue recovery from the ARPA grant. Typically in a year, we would see a fairly significant amount fall to fund balance of unspent budget. This year, we will have very little unspent budget that will fall to fund balance, probably less than $2 million. In the past, we've seen as much as $5 or $6 million. So I just want to keep that in mind, that our expenses and our revenues within the year are very close now. And as you know, we've budgeted 2025 actually with our expenditures higher than our revenues, and then filling that gap with fund balance. So I just want to point that out, that this year it's going to be very, very close, probably less than $2 million, which will actually fall from our expense savings.
Keep us posted on all of that. Councillor Little?
Bear with me because I'm new and I'm learning. Okay, so you, on the unassigned 74 million, I was just want some more clarification on that. What is it? You had said there are some commitments of that 74, or there's none. Just curious what we do with that money. So curious about that. And then at the very top, you had mentioned something about other revenue that we wouldn't be able to, under the other revenue category, that there'd be some that we would not be able to realize next year, and that's a sizable sum.
Yeah, so As
Just
part
curious
of
about
the
those.
American Rescue Plan Act, there was an allowance for revenue recovery for the revenue lost during the COVID pandemic. That allowed us to use some of the revenue of some of the money that we received from the ARPA grant, the American Rescue Plan grant, to cover that revenue lost. And that ended in 24. That was the last year. 24 was the last year that we could claim that money. We've used all of the capacity that we had in 24, and I'll talk about that grant in a little bit, but so in future years, that other revenue is going to decline because we won't have that revenue, and it's a sizable, every year it's been a sizable amount.
But not 75 million.
It's not 75 million.
Okay,
No,
that's
no.
what I was wondering.
In the past, it's been, this year, it's 7.5 million that we'll be reporting. The prior year, it was around 18 million. And the year before that was around 12 million. So there was a lot lead up to that's how we get the number that we have for that 74 million.
Okay.
Some of that money is already spoken for and will be coming to council in future council sessions to assign additional of that fund balance. So this is just an estimated number. We're working through the final numbers of where it will be for assignments to finish the projects that have already been committed and obligated as a part of the ARPA grant.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, as Mitchell said, we'll come back once the financial statements are final and recommend to council amounts that will be assigned. And by assigning those, it means we're reserving those because we know that we've already committed those for other things. For example, there within the general fund, there are funds in there that we will need to use to complete some of the commitments we've made for some of the ARPA projects. So that money will be assigned to those projects and not be available for other uses. Another example of a recommendation would be to set aside any funds that we've committed to balance the budget for 2025. And that process comes back to you and will probably be in March or April when we actually have finished the financial statements.
And you're talking about the 74.3
Yeah,
million.
that's right.
It's
It
called
would
unassigned.
Right, that will
It's
be
actually
shifted.
assigned.
That will be
Or will-
shifted to other categories.
It will be assigned by council once we have the final numbers that we're able to share with you.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Councilor Little, these are from directives that have already been made by council. It's just the matter of truing up the year end and then getting the final approval to put them aside. So it's not the auditor's office or anybody else saying, hey, we want to put $75 million aside. It's actually from council direction.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just we'll be reconciling all the projects and where they all land and how much we have still committed that have not yet been spent.
Okay.
Councilor Young?
Yeah, could we go back one slide real quick?
Or scroll up.
Yes, so I would be really interested in, maybe this is something that you could add to your report.
Yes.
Because I think this is a good way to illustrate to the public how important the 1% increase is. What I would love to see on this is the general fund, the actual percentage of growth on it, so of the revenue. So, and then compare that to what inflation
Okay.
we're experiencing. It looks like you wanted to say something.
Well, for property tax, it's on there. It's the 2.61.
Right,
That's
right.
the actual property tax growth.
Right, but I think that to compare apples and apples, I think it would be better to have the whole entire general fund, the percentage increase year over year. And it's important to point out that the 2.61% right there is going to be at least 1% lower for 2025 because council did not elect to take the 1%. So we're going to be showing some significant deficits there. When you compare the growth of the fund versus inflation, it's not keeping up.
Right.
Okay, we can add that.
Thank you. We can add that.
Any other questions? Okay, go on. Is there
Okay.
more?
There is. Moving on, we also detail a couple of the funds that have been of note and important to council. The first fund that we identify is the County Road Fund, and just the activity that we have of a budget to actual expense, both revenues collected and expenses. And they were pretty comparable to what they had anticipated to spend and also to receive. Moving on to community development. Community development has been for many years receiving a subsidy of general fund. And this year, the estimated subsidy from general fund is lower than it has been in the past. And that's partly because of the council's update to the fees that are collected from community development. So that will alleviate some of the burden that has been placed on general fund for many years. And then moving on, the American Rescue Plan grant, all of the funds that we had received have been obligated and committed. We're wrapping up the projects that have been assigned. These are some of the significant projects I've listed here: housing the unhoused, information technology within the county, public health response, some other significant improvements and benefits that the county council has directed to use of the ARPA fund has really benefited the community, and been used for the purposes this funding was designated to be used for. And then the final fund that I was just going to share is the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund. You can see that the budgeted expenses were a little bit less than what was than was budgeted. The revenues were right on target, and however, the actual expenses and revenues were very close. So that doesn't add to fund balance for future years. It's slightly adding to fund balance, not as much as what. So for future years to use that fund, it's very tight still.
And that was by intent. They wanted to budget the full use of this fund from the beginning. And so the fact that our revenues are right on and our expenses are close, it was intended to be that way. So.
Great, thank you for that. And then I just note on the ARPA dollars, all of that money was expended, and as I understand it, for one-time use, not for ongoing, unfortunately, not for ongoing expenses into the future. So it was a great windfall. We
Yes.
needed it.
Yes,
And now it's gone.
that's right.
And that's correct. There were a couple of positions that were funded through the ARPA funds that will either need to find new funding or be discontinued in 2025. And so those were primarily with the PA's office. If you recall, we were able to fund some positions to help with their backlog. And so during the 2026 budget request, he'll need to come back and say, well, what are we going to do with those positions? Because the ARPA funding will be spent. So I think he's funded through the end of this year.
Right, I think that's what I recall too.
Yes,
Hard decisions ahead.
yes.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to councilor reports. Are there any councilor reports?
Chair, I have a report.
Yes, please go ahead.
I just wanted to let everyone know we had the C-Tran board meeting last night. The recent IBR light rail related costs were discussed, and Camus recently signed a resolution to support the IBR, but not the light rail portion of the project. La Center is also having a C-Tran briefing like the Clark County Council had this week, and Battleground is next week. Washougal is this week as well. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a report related to ECHO. This week was my last meeting on ECHO. I've spent the year. It's been a great year. I think we're on a much more collaborative footing. But with me leaving as the chair, Counselor Fuentes is stepping up to participate, but that leaves the chair position open. And as I understand, Counselor Young is willing to take that position, but it needs an affirmative vote by this board. Okay, thumbs up all around. There you go. Congratulations and thanks for stepping up. Any other counselor reports? Okay, work session requests.
There's no new requests, but I did want to let council know that the TriMet IBR work session is scheduled for the 26th of February at 9 a.m.
And will we have someone actually from TriMet or will it be the IBR staff or?
The request was for TriMet.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, policy updates. Jordan, we're looking to you.
Yeah, hey council, good afternoon. For the record, Jordan Bogey, policy analyst. I've got a few items for you today. The first item I'd like to bring forward for your consideration is a request from the Vancouver Housing Authority. They are interested in having the county and in fact all of the cities within Clark County pass resolutions that would allow them to operate in their jurisdictions. So currently the way that the Vancouver Housing Authority's authority is written is that they can operate within the city of Vancouver and 5 miles outside city limits. And for the most part, that covers a lot of the unincorporated UGA of Vancouver, but they would like the county to pursue a resolution that would allow Vancouver Housing Authority to work countywide without needing to come in front of the county council to get direct approval for any project. And so this probably would not have a huge practical impact on the county directly, but they would like to show some leadership in terms of hopefully getting other cities to pass similar resolutions. And so today I would be looking to see if council is supportive of getting a resolution drafted, and I would bring this back before council at another council time for full consideration of the resolution. But I just wanted to see if we had 3 councilors in support of that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
I just have one clarifying question. That would not alleviate any of the permitting process steps. It just eliminates an extra step having to come before the council to get that approval to operate. They still go through permitting.
That is correct. Yes, they do have to comply with code and all of the other requirements of any building that would have to occur, but they would not need to come to the county council to get approval of a project as another step.
Okay.
Sure.
Any questions? Oh, okay. Go ahead, please.
Is that a bylaws issue, Jordan? Why is that? What's that stipulation like? Why was that created?
So that is, I'm not sure exactly why it was created. I could look into that, but essentially it's part of Washington state law and the way that housing authorities in particular are governed. And so the rule around housing authorities and their jurisdictions is whatever jurisdiction the housing authority is based in, they can work in that jurisdiction and then kind of within a 5-mile buffer zone. And so that is why VHA is limited to that area. Now they can work elsewhere in the county, and they do, but then they have to go through this extra step of getting county or city council. Like if they want to work in Battleground or Washougal or something like that, they would have to go before those councils to get approval for any individual project, even outside of the normal planning and code requirements that they would have to follow. And so that's, and so basically by passing this resolution, we would give them that authority to be able to, and I would need to look and see exactly what the RCW requirement is around that. But that's my understanding based on my conversation with the VHA. And if council's supportive of me moving forward, I can bring that information with a draft resolution to council as well.
Just for me
Oh,
personally, I would be interested in the compliancy portion of it. I would want us as a council to be in compliance. So I just would be interested in some extra information before me personally signing off on that.
Okay, Counselor Little?
Yeah, I don't think I know enough to say one way or the other. I mean, it's called the Vancouver Housing Authority, so it just creates a few questions about what we're approving here and what I know you mentioned it doesn't have any practical impact, but I'd like to know a little bit about the impacts and how that authority might conflict with the folks that are working on that and for the county. I just don't know enough to say this is a good thing or not. I assume it's good intent and it would help us have more people working on the issue, but I just don't know enough.
Counselor Young?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just say that this is kind of initial direction for him to dig more into it. So we will ultimately have a lot more information in front of us when we make that decision. But I did have one question. Does this have to go to a public hearing?
If council were going to pass the resolution, then I do believe that would need to go to a public hearing. But this initial step, as you mentioned, would just be for me to bring the draft to council along with some other requested information. And so that'd be the direction I'm looking forward to today. There will be several other steps before council ultimately approves or doesn't approve any follow-up steps, but I do want to gauge whether council is interested in moving forward with this.
Okay, great. And then the last question, you can just bring this later when you bring it to us. I'd be curious to see if any proposals have ever been declined. I don't think that it has, but I would be interested in finding that out. But otherwise, I'm, just initial thought process on this, it makes sense. I would be supportive, but I agree, I don't have all the information right now.
Okay, was there a
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jordan, we're not asking to change code or anything like that, correct?
No, although I would need to look and see what exactly the implications of this resolution are. Essentially, with the resolution request, it would allow for Vancouver Housing Authority to work countywide without needing to go through this additional step. If there are code changes that would have to be associated with that, that's something that I would need to look and find out in the process of putting this together. But I do not believe, based on my initial conversations with the Housing Authority, that this would require a code change, but that is something I'd have to dig into a little bit if council is interested in moving forward with checking this out.
Okay, so we'll look at that process. It may not need a public hearing, depending on what's needed in that approval process. Definitely a resolution would still need an approval on a Tuesday meeting, but we'll get that confirmed.
Councilor Fuentes?
Yeah, just to clarify, for whatever reason, there's an RCW out there that states that in this case, the Vancouver Housing Authority cannot request projects outside of the jurisdiction that they are based out of and 5 miles within that buffer zone, as you mentioned earlier, correct? And so it's basically just asking council permission to be able to go beyond that 5 mile radius. And everything else is, if they were to propose a project, it goes through the regular channels, correct?
Yes. So this would be, so it would go through all of the other regular channels. It just would not require additional council approval. And so outside of that 5 mile radius, which probably won't happen too often because most of the areas where Vancouver Housing Authority is working in the county are in the Vancouver UGA. And so most of that is within 5 miles. But to Councilor Young's point earlier, asking about whether there's been a denial, I'm not aware of any county projects that have been denied, but I do believe that in the last year or two, there was a project that the Battleground City Council denied that otherwise, I think, met their code requirements. But because it needed to go through that extra step of getting in front of the council, the Vancouver Housing Authority was not able to do that project. And so this essentially would give them the ability to basically a blanket approval countywide to say if Vancouver Housing Authority has a project that otherwise meets all of the requirements around development and zoning and code, that they could just go ahead and pursue that.
Okay, any other
Yeah,
comments? Go
just
ahead.
one more question. So I would like to have a little bit of clarification on that, and not now, obviously, but would our resolution trump Battlegrounds' ability to weigh in on this, or is it only like the unincorporated areas that we have in our jurisdiction? Okay, all right. So we
It's
wouldn't be
the latter. It
making-
would only apply to the unincorporated parts of the county.
Great, thank you.
And it would only apply to the urban unincorporated areas, correct?
I believe so. It would have to be. It would be wherever Vancouver Housing Authority already has the ability to do projects, and so I believe that is pretty much exclusively in the urban area. I'm not aware of any rural abilities, and I know they pretty much exclusively do multifamily, larger kinds of housing for the most part, and so that probably would not be allowed in the rural area under our code.
Right. Okay, Councillor Little.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there's just too many questions here that aren't answered that I feel like we need a more full briefing before we come forward with a resolution supporting it.
I think if there's curiosity and questions that need to be answered, but there's interest, this would just be a nod for Jordan to do a little more research, bring it back to us so he's not wasting his time or ours.
Support that.
Okay, great. I think thumbs up all around. So thank you for that. And I would just like to add that this is something that came up in the ECHO group, and there was a unanimous recommendation to bring this forward. And I think from Vancouver Housing Authority, it was seen as kind of a low-hanging fruit that could be helpful in encouraging housing affordability and affordable housing. So, okay, what else you got?
Thank you, Council. And so then I've got two bills that I would like to just bring before Council for your attention. The first is on Monday, Council talked with our lobbyists about House Bill 1690. And this is a bill from Representative Wiley. And it would look into assessing the state's existing water and sewer systems. And there was a question from our lobbyists whether the council was interested in potentially supporting this since it came from a member of our delegation. And I just wanted to give council a little bit more information on this to see if you'd like to take a position on this or not. It is getting its first hearing on Friday. And so what this bill would do is it would require the Department of Ecology and the Department of Health to jointly conduct and produce a continuing comprehensive needs assessment of the maintenance and upgrade needs for water and sewer systems throughout the state. And the goal would be to prevent pollution, protect public health, and support communities and the economy. And so the assessment would require them to essentially look at what sewer systems are in need of upgrades and maintenance, an analysis of the costs of upgrading and maintaining those systems, and options for program design and funding strategies. And so this wouldn't have a ton of direct impact on the county. Our interaction with the sewer system is generally through stormwater for the most part, but this would require the state departments of ecology and health to solicit data from state agency boards and commissions, and to work with cities and counties to understand any data or issues that are arising, reviewing relevant projects, and then report to the governor on the state of sewer and water systems by June 1st of even numbered years. And so just wanted to bring this forward for council and see if council is interested in taking a position here, or we could always wait and learn more, see if it goes through committee. I don't think from my reading of the bill, I don't think this is going to have a huge direct impact on the county. Probably the main reason that council might consider supporting this is because it's coming from a member of our delegation, and the county would want to show support for that. And whether or not you are interested in the state doing this kind of water quality report for sewer and water maintenance needs.
I would just like to add a little bit to the benefit to the county. Often with studies like this, it's a first step that leads to funding in the future. And in addition to stormwater, in our large urban unincorporated area are a number of septic systems that will take, I think, 80 years really at the rate we're going to hook them all up to sanitary sewer. So I think this could be a step towards funding to help speed that up. I'd be supportive.
Just going to comment, yeah, as long as it's the State Department of Health, correct? When you mentioned that. Okay, yeah, so the
That is correct.
expense would be borne at the state level and it would bring some benefit potentially to Clark County. So definitely supportive.
Councillor Belcott, you have a, okay, thumbs up all around.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you.
And I did look, and I will mention, I did look at the fiscal note as well, just to double check that there wasn't any projected cost for local governments, and there was not. So
Always good to check that.
absolutely. And then the second bill that I wanted to bring forward for your consideration today, Dr. Melnick brought this up for me, and this is Senate Bill 6505, and this is a kitchen micro enterprise bill. It sounds like this is a bill that comes up fairly often and is related to setting up a program where folks who essentially want to run small scale micro enterprise businesses through their house, through their home kitchen, and would put like essentially would establish a regulatory apparatus around what they call MEHKOs, MEHKOs, which are micro enterprise home kitchen operations. This is a little bit different than the cottage foods program, which only applies to non-potentially hazardous foods. So that's things like cakes, jams, like homemade vinegar. There's a few things. This bill, 6505, would require the local health jurisdiction, so in this case, the county health department, to inspect people's personal kitchens that they would be using for this program prior to permitting and up to once a year afterwards. Public health is concerned about this bill because it exempts these small kitchens from a lot of food safety requirements. And it also requires our public health staff here at the county to basically go into people's homes and inspect their kitchens, which I think there is some discomfort around that as a mechanism. And so public health and Dr. Melnick are interested if council is willing to basically the Association of Local Public Health Officials is very opposed to this bill, and Dr. Melnick thinks that at some point in the future they may ask local counties to testify, and he was hoping to get council's policy direction approval to, if as this comes up, to testify against this, if that is something that council would be interested in. So that's the request from public health around Senate Bill 6505.
Jordan, do you know if there's an inspection required with the cottage kitchen regulations that are in place now?
Ooh, that is a good question. Let me double check the bill summary here. Permitted areas for cottage food projects are subject to inspection by the WSDA. So it looks like for cottage food products, their permitted areas fall under the purview of the State Department of Agriculture. And so this would instead have the regulation be done by the county, by the local health jurisdiction.
Go ahead, Councillor Young.
Do we know if this would be kind of an unfunded mandate in a sense? Would there still be fees associated that would cover the cost to public health?
So part of the bill requires the Department of Health to put together regulations around this program. And so I think some of that is still to be determined, but it's not impossible that this would either create we would have to have local public health staff go and do these inspections. So that would certainly create a cost. Whether or not we would get that cost reimbursed through the permitting process, I think is sort of subject to how the program exactly is set up.
Okay, I guess I would appreciate some more discussion with Department of Health on this, because I would like to understand their concerns a bit better, because to me, this seems like a great situation for equity, allowing people that have less means to be able to potentially better their lives economically and financially. So I don't want to say, yes, we will support opposing it until I understand those concerns a bit better.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I'd just like to have some more information first. If there's not a pending hearing or something before next week, I'd love to get, I just tried to look it up online. I couldn't find it even posted yet, but I must be looking wrong. But would like to have more information first.
Okay, great. Yeah, the first hearing was actually held on Monday for this, and so I think we've got a little bit of time while this works its way through the committees, and so I can go back to Dr. Melnick, get a little bit more information, and have that brought back either at another council time or potentially if that could be part of the updates from Board of Health. Whichever is sooner and makes sense with council's schedule, if that's what you guys like to do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to let council know, Jordan did send this out by email. The link to the bill is in your email, so that might help you find that quicker.
Good. And if there's been a hearing, we can listen to the hearings. We can read the staff report. So there'll be a wealth of information there. And I'd be curious, what the demand is for something like this in the community. I don't know if there's a way to find that out.
I will see if there's any information available.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we're on pause with this and we'll check back in maybe on Monday. Anything else?
Yes, there is one more item, and that is that the county received late on Friday last week a letter from the city of Vancouver detailing its request for funding to help support their proposed bridge shelter. And so I just wanted to give council a little bit of an update on that letter and where we are going as staff to try to get all the information for council so that you can make an informed response to that request from the city. And so I think all of you have received that letter. I know Lon sent that out to Kathleen and council. And then there was a revised version that was sent a little bit later. So if you see two versions in your email inbox, check out the second one. But essentially, the upshot is that Vancouver's capital funding commitment for the bridge shelter, which is $16 million, it looks like it's not going to be sufficient to build the 150-bed shelter that was in the city's original vision. And at their current level of funding, that 16 million, including I think it was 9.5 million for the capital, they only have the capacity for, it appears, between 60 and 90 beds at the current level of funding. So it's quite a bit less than what they were originally hoping for and anticipating. And so in the letter that the city sent over, they made two requests. The first would be to just support capital to develop the bridge shelter. They're requesting $4.8 million, which is about 30% of the total capital cost, either one time or phased in over 2 years. Or a second option that the city has requested would be for a combination of capital funding, a contribution of around $3.5 million, and then ongoing operations and maintenance contribution of $450,000 for 3 years, which would represent about 6.5% of the $7 million annual operations cost that they anticipate. And so I know last time the council was considering this, there was conversations about potentially contributing $2 million to the bridge shelter. So both of these requests are higher than that. So council can think about at what level you are interested in supporting, whether the full amount that the city is requesting or a different amount. I also want to let council know that we've spent a little bit of time looking into available sources of funding, including the mental health sales tax fund, which council could allocate outside of the normal mental health sales tax advisory board process. If council is interested in going in that direction and utilizing mental health sales tax funding, what we are doing, and I know Kathleen has sent emails and that we are collecting this information, but we are looking at what internal programs might be otherwise requesting mental health sales tax this year, so that council can holistically review all of the information and all of the potential requests on the mental health sales tax fund, so that they can consider the city's requests in the context of the other things that could be funded with this. I also spent a little bit of time looking at the Opioid Abatement Council and that funding. That would be more challenging for council to utilize for the bridge shelter project as we looked into this, because we are contracting with Carillon to manage this process, and they're managing the opioid abatement committee process for a number of jurisdictions across the state. We're getting a bit of an economy of scale and some savings in terms of the administration of that funding. And the council has put together priorities for what those funds should be used for. And of course, we have 2 counselors on that committee. But if council wanted to make a unilateral decision to change how we utilize those funds, we would have to pull out of that contract with Carillon and move the whole administrative process in-house, which would be a little bit more technically challenging for us to do. And so, so right now, this is pretty much just an update for council. There's no decision point, but I just wanted to let you know that we are collecting all of the internal requests that our internal county departments might want to use this funding for. And then we hope to next week bring back those requests, as well as the City of Vancouver's request for the bridge shelter, so that you can consider all of that together at one time, and then move forward with at what level or to what degree council is interested in supporting the bridge shelter project moving forward. And so I just wanted to give that update. You've got all of this in writing in the letter as well. But I also just wanted to make sure that I gave you this update all together at council time, so that if you had any direction or areas that you were interested in me looking into further, that I could do that as well before bringing this back next week with a little bit more information for council.
Councilor Little?
Thank you for that. I'm just curious what the total amount in the mental health sales tax pot that we could potentially use is.
So I believe we have about $4.2 million of one-time funding available in the mental health sales tax fund. And then the amount that we get year to year fluctuates, but somewhere around $400,000 a year, give or take, that we get ongoing. So each year, that's about our net increase. And a lot of the ongoing mental health sales tax funding is allocated for positions, either in like therapeutic courts or the jail. And so depending on what council wants, if council wants to utilize any of the money for positions at all, that ongoing amount would change. But in the one-time bucket, $4.2 million.
Thank you.
And of that 4.2, there may, the potential asks are being put together in terms of our staff and
Yes.
outside that. So
Yeah.
we'll have more information about utilization of that fund.
Yes, we've received quite a bit of feedback from internal staff that have been working on programs to come before council, and then also just sharing what the outside recommendations were, or that didn't make the cut last year, of what those asks were as well. So we'll give that all to you.
And they didn't make the cut because there just wasn't enough money, or
yes,
many things.
There's a variety. Some did not pass
Yep.
the administrative review, which could be as simple as you didn't include all the right paperwork or signatures, and then some of which, didn't pass the full advisory board review through the process, either because there weren't available funds or because the advisory board felt that there were just other projects that they wanted to prioritize.
Counselor Little and then Counselor Young.
Thanks again. Is it possible that the opioid funding source could be used if we had an application for the normal annual process for operations or a type of operations specific to that issue?
I believe that the opioid, if the city of Vancouver applied for county opioid abatement funding as part of the Bridge Shelter project, and the OAC felt that that was a good use of funds, then I think that would be possible. And it also would be possible, if this is something council is interested, they could direct the members of council who are on the opioid abatement council to work to prioritize Bridge Shelter funding, or lend your support to that if that was a priority of council and that's a direction you wanted to go, even knowing that there is kind of that one step between, since the OAC is doing their own kind of process.
There are criteria, although the criteria can be fairly broad. So I think there could be a way for that to be accommodated through that normal process. Go ahead, Counselor Young.
Thank you. There's a couple projects that that did not receive some of the grant funding that they were hoping for, and so those may not be moving forward. And was the funding for those put back into that 4.2 million, or would that be in addition to if those contracts don't move forward?
So if those contracts are unable to move forward, that funding would be rolled back into the mental health sales tax fund. So it's possible. I know that they did not get a couple of, particularly a couple of the housing projects that you're talking about, Councilor Young. I know that they are looking at alternative sources of funding. And so I don't know if we have, I would need to check back in with community services staff to see if they've exhausted those options, or where they're at in the process, or whether there's hope of, building their full funding, based on some other sources. But I'm not sure of that quite yet. But I can check into that.
Okay. And then just one more thing as well, just kind of on, the thought pattern. And I've talked about this multiple times about the mental health sales taxes. We're kind of at a junction point where we've got to make some decisions on whether we want to continue having some money allocated for the grant process, or it could, if we don't do that, then it will essentially end up like the public safety sales tax, where there's really nothing to give out in terms of grant funding. One option to consider would be, although Jim Jensen and Carolyn have nothing but good things to say about them. They've done excellent work for us. But if we did look at backing out, there is the potential to kind of combine the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board and the opioid, especially if there's not really much for the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board to take on if there is not really ongoing funding for grant.
That sounds very complicated, and I'd be wary of losing something that's operating really well with the Opioid Abatement Council. So I'm curious about the timing of this, because I know the city of Vancouver is anxious to understand whether or not we have and what kind of support we might have. So
I think Jordan was just giving the update today, and then next week it's on your council time agenda to present all the information that we have received and then take direction from council at that time.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Chair, I have one other question.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just trying to confirm from when I was in the ECHO committee. Wasn't Carolong formerly Lifeline Connections? Am I remembering that right?
They weren't Lifeline Connections, but they were a well-known name, and I can't remember what it was now. It's been long enough. Is
it AIM Specialty Health?
I don't think so, no.
I was thinking, so I think Lifeline got, I was just trying to make sure that I wasn't confused with Carillon, what they were doing before,
Was it,
but I think,
was it Beacon? Beacon, yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
what it was.
It was Beacon. We've got confirmation from the
Okay.
audience.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Is there anything else, Jordan?
That was all I had for you today. Thank you, Council.
Okay, so that's policy updates. So council is going to have a recess now. We'll move into our work sessions and then we'll reconvene and go into executive session.
How long is recess?